So there were so many beautiful questions, way too many to answer, and that's just lovely. So we tried to divide them up into themes, and one topic was topics of the heart, and the other topic was more topics of the head, the self and chitta, thoughts and emotions, and there was finally like a random group. So I will probably just sort of draw and see what happens. There's no way that I can answer all of them, so I apologize about that, right? Somebody wrote, this is from the random pile. Somebody wrote, non-clinging does not always mean not taking action. Very true. How to tell when it's wise to take action in the absence of clinging? Is equanimity a possible answer? Probably, right? But, truth be told, taking action is always more skillfully done when it's done from a place of non-clinging, always. So if we consider the story of the child with bad grades, she could be clinging, the damn teacher, and, clinging, and my child, and what's wrong with me, all that clinging happening. It's very difficult to take appropriate, like wise action and wise speech, right, from let's say the Eightfold Path. Wise speech isn't happening. It's going to be difficult to use wise action. There might be harsh emails. Action will always be done wisely and more skillfully, coming from a place of non-clinging. And in how to tell when it's wise to take action, I would say it's wise to take action if it brings about wholesome states for self or others. If the action brings about goodness without harming yourself, then it's always wise to take action. Yeah, I hope that helps. One more from the random pile. Can you quickly review the entering the stream where there's no clinging? Yogi's brain tends to forget from the Friday night talk. Yeah, so in our tradition, Theravadan tradition. So Theravadan tradition is the tradition that really is staying closest to the original teachings before as Buddhism spread around the world with each kind of broadening and widening, it adapted itself to different cultures of the time. Like by the time it became Tibetan Buddhism, the Tibetans have all these sort of animal gods and goddesses and all kinds of imageries that got sort of merged with Buddhism. So it gets a little bit farther. Teaching's still the same, but a lot added. So Theravadan tradition is ours, and there's not so much added, right? Just the bare Dharma. So entering this stream in the Theravadan tradition refers to when one has a moment of insight, a moment of enlightenment, shall we say. It could be one moment where you fully recognize that clear and true truth that everything that arises is passing away. One moment. Right? And then it's said that you've entered the stream, and by entering the stream, we mean coming out of that thinking mind. The thinking mind is putting things in boxes, freeze frame, staccato, kind of seeing everything as separate, not interconnected. Right? Thinking mind this is working against the river of change, right? So when we've come down out of that thinking mind, then we can enter the river of change. I hope that helps. Yeah. Let's see, how about this one? Oh, I love this. If we are primate animals, how can we ever really move beyond our fear-driven clinging and aversion to change? That seems like a denial of our humanity. Well, yeah, we are primate mammals, and we have a fight or flight reaction. And that fight or flight reaction was designed to keep us alive in caveman days. And it's the same fight or flight reaction, and our brain responds the same way now that it did then, and it serves us very little purpose, under maybe some exceptions where we need to run like hell. And there are some, yeah, or when we have to fight for our life, right? That's it. Back in those days, though, there was danger everywhere. We had to be alert constantly. Our mind only looked at the negative. It only found things to watch out for and to be afraid of, right? We don't live in that world now, right? So the idea is that we, in time, are rewiring our brain, right? We still have a caveman brain. All that part of our brain hasn't changed, right? With mindfulness, we know that that part of the brain gets rewired. It gets rewired so that we are actually more inclining towards positive experiences rather than latching on to negative. Brain rewires so that it is not as reactive to things that aren't threats, right? So the amygdala shrinks. Let's say someone takes an 8-week MBSR class, that amygdala shrinks in that 8 weeks. So the brain is no longer responsive to fear as responsive. And we know that when we're less afraid, we can love more. And that to me seems very human. I don't think we're losing a human birthright when we are less afraid and we can love more, right? Yeah, I hope that helps. Next pile, heart. As I let go of attachment and reactivity, others can feel I am emotionally disconnected. How can I grow my emotional engagement while being less reactive and more present? That's a beautiful question. So true, as we practice the Dharma, we are less reactive. And if others are used to us being reactive, that's one thing. It depends on, who we're with. But if others are used to us being reactive, it definitely can feel disconnecting for them. It happens to me all the time. Like somebody will come to me at the end of an MBSR class and says, my wife doesn't think I should be doing this stuff because she thinks like I'm more detached now, right? And so the answer to that and growing emotional engagement is always the heart practices, right? And I know the person who actually asked this is a little bit more new to the depth and the breadth of this tradition, but these heart practices, loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity are of equal importance to the decreasing reactivity and letting go of attachment. So there are these two branches of Dharma training, the wisdom teachings that we've been talking about a lot, which is where that decreased reactivity and unselfing comes from, and then all the heart teachings. And we have to grow the heart, and when the heart grows, then whoever you're with relating to is going to feel that love and kindness, compassion. You'll be more joyful. You'll have more ease in the face of challenge, and the person you're interacting with will know it. But this is about practice, so it's not a quick fix, right? Hope that helps. Enjoyed Friday night Dharma meditation. Building on that, can you give examples of how to forgive those that have wronged you? So as an aside, there's a whole practice involving forgiveness. So we did not do that. here, but there are very clear forgiveness practices that really are training you to forgive yourself, forgive somebody else who's harmed you, ask somebody else for forgiveness. So these are practices just like loving kindness or compassion. So that helps. I'll just say that for whoever asked the question. Forgiveness practices will help. But beyond that, forgiving someone sometimes isn't even necessary when you begin to understand causes and conditions. Right? So when people have wronged you, and it, you know, I'm not right now talking about the deepest of wrongs. Right now I'm not talking about the little girl who was raped by the sea pirate. Not talking about that. We may be talking about pretty big hurts right now. I have no idea what this hurt was, what somebody's asking, but we're avoiding the worst of the hurts right now is very complicated. But when somebody has wronged you, you can know that their action came about from causes and conditions. In the same way that a fire burns when the causes and conditions are there. So every single person's actions come from causes and conditions dating back all the way through their ancestors, right? The person who I am right now and the actions I take are related to so many causes and conditions that were beyond my control. And so there's a story in the book about, let's say there's a china shop owner, and somebody lets a bull into the china shop, and the bull is charging around, breaking all the china, right? Is the china shop owner angry and blaming at the bull? Right? Or does the china shop owner, if they have a little mindfulness, understand that the bull was just doing what bulls do? Right? The bull has bull nature, and that's what bulls do. Bull in a china shop, that's what they do. That's how they are, right? Now, it's possible the china shop owner would be angry at the person who let the bull in. We could blame them, you know what I mean? But really the bull, the one who's doing the harm, the actual direct harm, is just being doing what a bull does, right? And you can think of people who harm other people as like that. So, like, we don't have to forgive the bull. Do you see? Do we have to forgive the bull? We might have to forgive the one who let the bull out, I'm just saying. But we don't. We don't have to forgive the bull. Right? So if we start to think of people who are harming as bulls in china shops, maybe we can recognize that they didn't know what they were doing. When people do harm, you know, they're not yet capable of seeing and loving, as Tai says. You know, they don't have the benefit of the Dharma training that we have, right? So there's, you know, two answers to this question. One is forgiveness practices, formal forgiveness practices, and the other is this idea of causes and conditions, and that understanding that, you know, when people are doing harm, it's an expression of their nature. It doesn't mean we're letting them off the hook. I mean, if somebody's dangerous, they probably shouldn't be on the streets. You know, bulls should be, you know, locked up, right? We can't just let them out, right? So we're not saying that we allow bad behavior, but we're saying that we have true understanding, as Thich Nhat Hanh did, about, let's say, the causes and conditions that led to the sea pirates, raised in a village where, you know, women are treated like chattel, used and abused, taught to steal and hurt people from an early age to survive, right? So when Thai really, really fully understood the causes and conditions that led, forgiveness became not an issue. It became a non-issue, right? So in many cases, when you begin to work with causes and conditions, forgiveness kind of slips away, right? And then there's forgiveness practices too. So I hope that helps. Another one from the heart. I better keep track of the time. Let's see. This is a good one. How do we know we're doing enough when it comes to compassion-driven action? Is it ever enough? Oh, that sounds tiring. First of all, I say, I would say that striving is dangerous. I would say that focusing on our own practice naturally, and then allowing Dharma to radiate around you naturally, would be a wise direction. So focusing on one's own practice rather than I'm going to do compassionate works. You see how that is? So here I am, I'm just doing all my own practice, and all of that just radiates naturally. Medicine for all. We don't have to strive, and we don't have to get an A+ in compassionate action. It all unfolds naturally, yeah. It's a beautiful question. Oh, no more time. I'm going to have to do the self and chitta. So there's a lot of ones in here about the selfing, right? And chitta. How I wish I could answer them all. But I'm going to start with this self one. Where is that? Somebody had. Okay, can you explain selfing and not selfing, please? So in my mind, there's two forms of selfing. One is what I will call micro self. This is me. It's not anybody else. What I call micro selfing, which is when we identify with thoughts and emotions. When we say I, when we really, think our thoughts and emotions are me. I am my thoughts and emotions. I am my body. So we have, let's say, identified with those things, right? So that's micro selfing. Macro selfing is along the lines, and you've heard me say, I, me, and mine. It's really, when we're really focused on I, me, and mine, we've really created this whole, let's say, illusory sense of a self that is, we, feel is fixed, stable, not changeable, and not affected by the rest of the world. So it's this idea that there actually is a fixed, stable, unchanging self, right? And there's, if we're to dive more deeply into that, the Buddha, so we've been talking about anatta, not self. So not self, it really is referring to, well, wait, I am not those thoughts. I am not my emotions. I am not my body. There's a body here, but it's not me, right? It's a body, right? There are thoughts here, but it's not me. Thoughts are transient, right? How could they be me if they're coming and going, right? So the Buddha, when asked about the self, if he was asked, what is the self, Venerable One? He actually would never answer that question, because what he was concerned with is what is not self. It's a misnomer. I've seen it on greeting cards, like Buddhist looking for himself or something like that. It's not a teaching of no self, right? He didn't really address that because it had nothing to do with happiness or unhappiness, whether or not there is a self. However, in modern days, we have some useful ways of considering self. And what I'm going to talk about now comes from Rick Hansen, who's a really esteemed neuropsychologist who likes to really expound on the differences between self and person. So we typically think of self as a fixed being that's stable, meaning unchanging. The self I was when I was 5 is the same self that I am now, except bigger. And that it is not really affected by other things. Again, fixed, stable, unchanging. We often consider that word self to mean there's only one self, and that's me, right? And that we also consider a self to be something that we can that's tangible, that we can grasp, some real thing, right? But when we consider really how our lives are, how we live our lives, Rick likes to say that it could be more useful to consider ourselves as persons, right? So a person, we're all persons here in this room. A person, we could say, has a body that endures over time. We know this. It's not a mystery. We have this body. It lasts for some time. We also have a mind that endures, hopefully, over some time. So we have a body and a mind. We have a body and a mind. Why do we need a self, right? I was just reading something by Buddhadasa Bhikkhu, who basically says, you have a body and a mind, why do you need a self? Right? So the mind is easily conditioned over the period of our lifetime. So with conditioned experiences over the course of a life, we might develop a personality. A lot of people think of self as personality. But personality is conditioned over time. And it can be, people can change personalities. Does that mean they've changed their self? Right? So self really, for our purposes, isn't a lot that we pay attention to. What we are not is more important. So, and it could be useful to, instead of focus on self, instead start to consider yourself as a person who changes over time, who's not unchangeable, who is impacted by the world. Also, a person can have many selves, kind of like the compounded eyes of that grasshopper that Mary Oliver writes about. We have many selves, we could be different. I could be this Dharma teacher in one place, and then I could be a total goofball in another place, So we have all these different selves. We're very changeable. We could have been really shy some years ago, and then something could happen and we could not be shy, So we're all very changeable. We have many different selves. We're impacted by the outside world. And what endures over time? What endures over time is the body and the mind. Right? Hope that helps. More selfing. Let's see. I want to do a cheetah one. Let's see. Wow, this is a good one. Why is it more difficult to notice the beginning of emotions? I'm striving to notice them, the beginning of emotions. I might be creating them versus letting them arise. Is that common too? Well, it would be difficult to really self-create an emotion from scratch. But we can start with why is it difficult? So an emotion is essentially, typically, unpleasant ones, let's just say right now, an injection of cortisol that happens like that. Boom, that's that fight or flight reaction. Anger, sadness, fear, all unpleasant emotions, they underlying are triggered by cortisol release, and that's an injection, right, like that. That's not like a little trickle of cortisol. No, that's like an injection. boom, emotion, right? So it's pretty hard to catch that, right? Usually we're just like, oh, an emotion is there, right? Happiness, too, is going to involve injections of oxytocin, which counteracts cortisol, right? But again, injection, right? It's not like a little trickle. It's a burst, right? So that answers that, right? Why is it so difficult to notice the beginning? I'd have to talk directly to this person, but striving to notice the beginning of emotions, maybe being worried that you're creating them. You may be calling up an echo of a previous emotion. Maybe you might be searching so hard that an echo is called up. We do that, call up a memory, and then you might feel a little something, right? But that's a memory. Right, it's not like you're creating the emotion. Let's say calling up sadness and then offer self-compassion. So I'm actually not creating sadness, I'm calling it in, right? So it may be that there's a little of calling in when you're searching for the start of an emotion, but it's not likely that you're creating them from scratch. So do that. Another, no, we can only do, wait, we did the heart one is almost empty. Okay, one more selfing one, or cheetah. Oh, well, this is a complicated one. Whew. When we lessen selfing and are less attached to our thoughts, feelings, and beliefs, knowing we are not them, how do we show up in relationships, especially with people we're just coming to know? How can we understand ourselves and others when first meeting? I think that somebody who's less attached to thoughts and feelings and beliefs thinks that they're a person, not a self, is probably more flexible. And when you're meeting somebody, they'll know, wow, you're really flexible. I think that you may be less defensive, right? You're meeting somebody and they'll, wow, you're not very defensive. Or you're getting to know somebody and you're not stuck on beliefs, you're not clinging to rights and wrongs. They'll be like, wow, you're kind of nice to be around, right? That's what I think, right? Do you think so?
Yeah, the word authenticity comes out, coming with that person.
Yeah.
Meeting with the person instead of the story.
Meeting with the person instead of the story, yeah. And it's that all that heart stuff we're saying. It's the joy that radiates when you are not attached to things. It's the love that radiates when you're not attached to things, right? I enjoy getting to know people who practice the Dharma. Right? They're easy to know and easy to love. They're safe. I know they're not going to judge me, right? I know they're doing their own work, right? Dharma practitioners are the best of people. Right, I'm sad to say we have to stop, but this has been fun. I wish I could answer them all. If any of you didn't have everything answered, then you might get a chance to talk to me when we've broken the silence, and maybe I can address it. But for now, I'll send you off for a walk. Just this time, again, it's cold and dark, so we're changing the schedule a little bit with these things. Let's see, it's 8:07. We'll do a walk until